is in the form of property taxes. And there's been a change in the law and the way taxes are, let me just use the word figured, but the assessment, and then in terms of exemptions, a lot of changes happen because of a recent House bill. And so what we wanted to do was to inform you about those changes so that you will be empowered with the knowledge that you need to go down to the tax office and make the necessary changes for your taxes, as well as when you get this new assessment to be able to read it and understand it. And so we have tonight this young man standing beside me. He stole part of my hair. That's why my beard is not as long as it's supposed to be. He took most of it, but he's still my friend. I love him. We go all the way back to Albany State together, and that's a long time ago. But he's the vice chairman of the Board of Tax Assessors here in Albany. He understands the law. He understands this whole process for us. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him so that he can share with us those things that he thinks we need to know. And we'll also have an opportunity for questions and answers. Our brother Larry Thomas, it's in your hand.
Good evening, everybody. As Pastor just said, I'm Larry Thomas. But first and foremost, I need to take care of a little business. First thing I want to do, I want to thank God for allowing all us to be here tonight to bring this information to you. I'd like to thank Pastor Simmons for giving me this opportunity, First Lady Diane Simmons, and all of the Simmons family, as well as all of the Mount Zion executive staff and members as yourselves. So with no other further ado, what I'm going to do tonight, I want to try to bring you some information that might be helpful for you. The handout that you have is a small PowerPoint that we put up, and we've been presenting this information to different community groups throughout the city and the county, and it's just an opportunity tonight for me to bring this information to Mount Zion. And I'm going to briefly go through this little PowerPoint, read through it, and then at the end of the session, if you want to have some questions about it, we'll be open for try to answer any questions. Normally, what I have with me, I would have the tax director, which is Ms. Shauna Joseph, and she's on the collection side of this process, and also Chief Appraiser Adam Bridges. But they are right now at a meeting with the county for a rate increase, and so they are doing that tonight, so I'm going to go solo tonight. Any of the questions that we may have, we ask that we got a number here that we can call 431-2130 to answer some questions that we may not get addressed tonight, okay? So I'm going to start out with going through the PowerPoint. The agenda, we got homestead exemption, House Bill 581, 2026 revamp, and we got questions and answers. Homestead exemptions. What is a homestead exemption? And I'm sure that most of you have homestead already, and that's one of the main priorities with me being here. I want to make sure that there are people that don't have homestead, to make sure you go in and file for your homestead, because it would definitely be beneficial for you moving forward. It's beneficial because it allows a reduction in the amount of taxes that you pay. So any question that you have, feel free to bring them forward at the end of the presentation. Definition of a homestead. Based on official code of Georgia 48540, homestead means the real property owned by and in possession of the applicant on January 1st of the taxable year upon which the applicant resides, including but not limited to the land immediately surrounding the resident to which the applicant has the right of possession under bona fide claim or ownership. Types of exemptions. There's a multitude of different exemptions that we have, and the reason we ask that people call, because we got clerks in the department that specialize in handling all of this list of homestead. And if you got the handout in hand, you can see that we got L1, S1, S3, S4, S5, SC, SDS, okay? Some of these are regular homestead. The regular homestead exemption amounts to $2,000 of assessed value. For those of you that might not be familiar with the process, your valuation, what you pay taxes on, is based on a fair market value of your property at 40%. That 40% amount, that's what we call your assessed value. And that's what your taxes is based on, that assessed value. So when you get your regular homestead, and the only thing you have to do to get a regular homestead is to be living in your property as of January 1st of that particular applied year. Living in that property and be the owner of record of that property. I've had 15 or 20 people over the last month that have been living in their homes for 10, 15 years, and because of this change coming next year, I found out they don't have homestead. So it's the easiest thing for you to do is to call that number and make sure that you are getting homestead. And I think Pastor mentioned something to me. He came down, checked, and found out he qualified for something more. That's the other advantage of you calling that number and seeing, are you getting your homestead? Can you qualify for an additional homestead? Okay? So those are the main priorities with these different homesteads that we have. Application process. You need to have a photo ID if you come down to apply. In some cases, you might have to have a tax return because in some of the homestead that you have, they base it on what type income it is. They may exclude your Social Security amount, but they may count other working income. So they ask that you bring a tax return, copy of the tax return, so that the clerks that handle this could very easily determine whether or not you qualify and what you may qualify for, okay? Disabled veterans as well. Any disabled veterans in here, there's a veteran exemption. The veteran exemption is one of the larger of the exemptions. It can exclude you from a tremendous amount of property taxes. And that means that you have to have your DD-22, have that available, and get a letter stating your amount that you're supposed to get from the Veterans Administration, okay? Yes. All right, thanks. Okay. When, all right, the norm of time to apply for homestead exemption is between January 1st and April 1st. Some of you new owners just purchased a property. If you notice, your attorney, closing attorney may say, hey, come down and apply for your homestead exemption, okay? That normally that time is between January 1st and April 1st. If you come after that time, you couldn't get that exemption for that year. But because of this new House bill, 581, they allow additional opportunity for taxpayers to come in. You have a 45-day appeal period if you were filing an appeal on your property. That new House bill allow you to come in anytime during the appeals process and file for your homestead exemption, okay? So that's an additional opportunity for you to file. Floating homestead exemption. Now, this 581, it was created to try to lessen the pain of taxpayers, especially in the Atlanta area, where you have property value escalating enormously over time. And this bill right here allows a reduction if you are a property owner that is getting homestead. It does not apply to rental properties, commercial property, industrial property. This 581 floating homestead exemption only applies to property owners that are living in their properties that are getting homestead. And that's why it's important for you to be sure that you are getting some type of homestead. You don't have to get but one type to be able to qualify for this floating homestead exemption, okay? It was introduced and passed by the House and the Senate Representatives, Blackman, of 146 and 118, signed into law April the 18th, required passage November the 5th, 2024, became effective January 1st, 2025. So this new bill is effective started this year. But the biggest advantage for you all would be because we have in process a 2026 revaluation of all the property in the city and the county. That would be a comprehensive revaluation. It's going to handle all classifications of property, commercial, residential, agricultural, all types, okay? What is a floating homestead? A floating homestead is a special type of homestead exemption designed to offset or cap inflationary increases in value. Now, when they say inflationary increases, most people may not be familiar with that term. If inflationary increase is based on the market. If houses start to accelerate in prices, values increasing, that is what we call inflationary. That's inflationary due to the market. What we call real growth is when you add something to your property. You can add an addition to your home. You can add a swimming pool, accessory building, any of those type things like that. That's not considered inflationary growth. And as we move into PowerPoint, I'm going to give you an example and get a better vision of how that really worked. Yes. Yes, Pastor.
The homestead. And so the regular is, just for anybody got a house. You qualify for the regular.
Yes.
And
yes.
then the senior, and like I told you, they gave me a second homestead, and she just asked me to bring proof of my Social Security, that I get Social Security check, and I was happy to do that. I'm proud of that Medicare and that Social Security. So then that got me the senior. And so now can I go down there and ask for this floating?
Ask which one of them?
Can I get the floating too?
Yes. That's going to be, and that's a good point, Pastor. That's going to be in addition to anything you already getting. See, it's a different type of a homestead. So if you are already getting a regular homestead, a veterans exemption, S4, what they call a double homestead for school tax or something like that, you're going to still get that. The floating homestead will have no effect, will not change that at all. It's in addition to that.
Okay.
Okay? What was that?
You have to.
No, not the floating homestead. This is going to be applied to all property owners that are homesteaded. If you are getting a homestead on your property, you're going to automatically get it. Because we'll have all the records to know who are getting what type of homestead. So yes.
Question.
Yes.
Will that be a certain age that you have to apply for it?
There are multiple homesteads that are related to the age. The regular homestead does not have an age requirement, but there are some once you turn 62 what they call a senior exemption. That's one of those L1s or something like that. Yes, there's an age requirement for some of them. And that's why when you take the opportunity to come down and talk to one of our professional clerks that specialize in it, they'll be able to make the determination as to what you are suited for and what's the best opportunity for you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You can get a L1 and S1.
Now, the S1 and the L1 may have different requirements. One of them is applied directly to the city, and I don't have all the specific information as to those individual requirements. That's why we're saying that the easiest thing to do is to call that number, and the clerks will be able to explain to you what the differences are. We have about 8, 9, 10, 11 different homesteads. The regular homestead is a basic one. If you're L1 and you're living in the city, it's a multitude of different requirements, whether you're living in the city or living in the county. But they can answer any of those questions. They specialize in those.
So the L1 is a $2,000 exemption.
The L1 could possibly be a basic $2,000 exemption.
What's
But
the basic for the S1?
S1, I do not have that information as to specifics with that amount of homestead, but that's why we asked that they just call in. The person that would have handled the extra, we are not here tonight. But we just want the opportunity to let you know that there's a variety of homestead that you can apply for. And that all you have to do is call that number and speak to one of the clerks, and they'll be able to answer any specific question. Because when they have to go in and do a review of your tax return, we want to make sure that you get every opportunity to have the best homestead fitted for you. And I wouldn't want to do it any undue justice by giving you information that I wasn't sure about. Question?
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Since my age would determine that I'm a senior, why should I take my income tax return? Would that be based on how much my salary is, how much income I get?
Well, some of the homestead have a income requirement that you have to meet and whatnot, but because you are a senior, you can qualify for one of the ones that just for being a senior, age 62. But it's not necessary that you have to on the others.
So that will not increase my tax if I have a high income?
Well, you may not be able to qualify for a particular homestead exemption based on the information that you provide.
All right, thank you.
Okay, one question. I have people chiming in on the Zoom here, asking me these questions. On the Homestead Act, do you only vote, or do you only apply one time, or you apply every year?
No, once you apply for your homestead, that's there. It stays there. Unless something change about your situation with the property. You either buy, change your name on the property, or not living in the property anymore. It stays there.
Okay, and the other question is that if you go and you have a question about the property taxes being added to you, and can you go and complain about it? I have to complain about it, but when you don't complain about it within 45 days, you can't do anything about it after that point?
Well, that is part of the appeals process,
All right.
and I was going to get into that as we go through the PowerPoint.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And the people that you named before, and you said they're not here with you tonight, I'm one of those persons who's already gone down there. I have homestead already, and I was told that there was possibly some other tax exemptions I would qualify for. I went down there, took all of my information. They never even looked at it. Only thing she looked at was she looked at my property address and told me that I did not qualify for anything else. She said I had homestead exemption, and in that was also school taxes applied. But as far as income, and I had everything with me, but she never even looked at it. And this been just a couple months ago.
Well, I would like to look more into that because that is just how specific, ma'am, this homestead can be with the multitude that we have. And I couldn't just address that without knowing any details of your specific situation. But I'd be glad to get some information on you and get that properly addressed for you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. With the veterans' disability, does all this apply with that? I mean, do you have to go down and ask for all that, or is all that included with the veterans' disability?
With any of these exemptions, besides the floating homestead, the new one that is generated from the new House Bill 581, you have to come in and apply. That include veterans exemption, any other type, you have to come in and apply.
Okay,
Okay, I have a question. Can you repeat the number to call to find out whether or not you?
It is, the number to call is 229-431-2130. That is the Dougherty County Tax Department.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I'm gonna go through quickly through the definition of a homestead. Homestead means the real property owned by in the possession of an applicant as of January 1st of the taxable year upon which the applicant resides, including but not limited to the land. And I think I already covered that. Okay, all right. When? January 1st to April 1st, as well as during your appeal process. Floating homestead. Now, on page 11, if you got the handout, this gives you an example of this new floating homestead and how it really works. All right. It is also, what is a floating homestead? It is also referred to as a base year of value offset exemption. It works by increasing the value of the exemption to offset inflation. For example, if a property had a taxable value of $100,000 and the taxable value increased the following year due to market changes to $110,000, then the exemption float would be worth $10,000. See, now, remember what I said, that it's the offset inflation. So if you got a house value that is at $100,000 and it moves up the next year to 110, with this new house bill, if you are homesteaded, you will not have to pay all of that additional amount for that extra 10. Your taxes will be based on the 100. That's the advantage, Pastor, right there. And that's why it's so important for everybody to have this in a year that we finna reassess values. Because values, we have not had a total evaluation in Dougherty County. The last one was in 2007. We did some basic upgrades 5-6 years ago. And with that being said, from COVID, values blew out through the roof. And I think most of you are familiar with the values. If you look at your tax notice and you look at the value that your property is assessed, first thing you're going to say, oh, I know my house worth more than this. And it is. But that's the reality between if you're trying to sell that house or you trying to pay taxes on it. Everybody want it low when it's time to pay taxes, but when it's selling, you want it to be way up here. And that's just the process. That's the process. So this is where you get full advantage, because this new house bill gonna allow you to not pay on that different amount. We are going to have some properties that gonna increase. It might go from 100,000 to 175,000. You're gonna have someone to go from 200,000 to 300,000. Because when you have not made a current reevaluation, you got to expect that your values are low. And as we talk about that, we are guided by the Department of Revenue. They come in every year and do what they call a Department of Audit ratio study on all of our values. That is a determining body that lets us know when we need to do a reevaluation. The requirement is that our values must fall ratio-wise between 36 and 44%. As long as we are inside that range, when the Department of Audit come in and audit us every year, we are okay to apply these values. But once we fall outside that range, that means that our values are too low. And the state would not allow us to tax values that low. Because the law is that every property supposed to be at fair market value. So there's a premise that people have a lot of time when you don't do current reevaluation, that oh, this is the tax value. It's not what it really sells for, but that tax value supposed to be what it really sells for. Now, with this current situation coming, that means that you all gonna have to get yourself prepared. It's not gonna be in the days now where you sit back and look at that assessment notice and it's staying the same every year. Because these are gonna be some drastic changes on some of these properties. So that's why I'm here tonight, to get you prepared and let you know that the realization is values have been low. We have fallen outside of the acceptable range by the Department of Revenue. So we must revalue property. This is not something that just come up all of a sudden. We started this reevaluation process 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago. So when that happened, it takes time. We value 38,000 parcels in Dougherty County. It takes time. It takes expertise to do a massive reevaluation like this. So it's not seem like it just started all of a sudden. We've been working on it for a while.
Question, Maker.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to frame this so, as you said, we can be ready. So the last time we had an evaluation was 2007.
That was the comprehensive one.
The comprehensive.
That revalued everything, yes.
And you're doing the comprehensive now. It's been going for a couple of years. And the state has said the values you had were low. And so it has to be at a certain rate. And so if you got a house, you got to know since 2007, that value has increased.
Yes.
And so you can expect a higher tax bill.
Well, that's the catch, Pastor. Now I'm gonna have to separate at this point the understanding of value in your final assessment for your tax purposes. The assessor's job is to value property. We do not apply millage rates. We only assess the proper evaluation, right? So the millage rate is set by the city county school board. They set the rate. That rate does go a long ways in determining what your final tax would be. So there's a misconception, though, that everybody automatically think that if your property value go up, yes. If the rate stays the same and the value increases, yes, your final tax will increase. But there's an opportunity that the city and county school board can roll back that rate. How much? That's their determination. They might offset some of that. But there's still, you are correct, that if the values increase, it's a strong possibility that your final tax bill will increase. And because of that separation, I always don't talk about taxes. Our job as assessors is to talk about fair and equitable values. So people are confused, and we understand that most people look at that final bill that they get. I had a lady come in one day, she said, oh, I ain't worried about the value, I'm just worried about the bill I got. The value was okay, but that final bill is what she was concerned with. But that plays a big role, Pastor. Big role. Someone else had a question. Yes, sir.
Good evening. How you doing?
All right.
Since COVID, or before COVID, we was considered a metropolitan type city with over 100 and some thousand people. Since COVID, are we still? I know we're not qualified as a metropolitan city anymore. How does that affect the value of everyone's property?
Well, let me state it like this. Everything that we do in establishing values of properties is based on our local market. So whatever sells in your community is what we base this on. It's not based on what they sell for in Atlanta. It's not based on what they sell for in Camilla, Cordilla. It's based on what they sell right here in Albany and Dougherty County. So we're going to take sales information from here. So whatever the overall market, metropolitan, population count is has no bearing on our process as we value properties. Now, that does not mean that it won't have an effect if you lose 30% of your population. That means you got less sale, you might have less people buying and selling. But we only look at the data, statistical data that tell us what we need to do here local. Right, but if they move away and a house sale next door to them for 40% more, that's the information we use. We don't look at if they move. We don't look at if we got 100,000 now or 80,000 people. We look at how many qualified sales or properties that we have in this community. That's what we look at. But that's a good question. Okay, all right. Leaving page 11. Now, I'm going to finish up on this floating homestead. So that floating homestead now, imagine this. If you got a property right now that's valued at $100,000 in the 2026 revamp, it goes up to $190,000, and you worried to death that you got to pay now almost double. This is what this floating homestead will do. It'll allow you the opportunity to be taxed on the 100, not the 190. That's how important it is to have a homestead, you know. And I can't stop saying that enough. Now, there are some other situations centered around this that get more specific, and I could be here all night talking about them, Pastor. But one of the things is that even though you might have an increase, whether the millage rate change or anything like that, or if there are other reasons why your property change, the city and the county opted in. The governments had an opportunity to opt in or out of this new house bill. The city and the county did not opt out. The school board opted out. Now, this is the difference than what I'm just telling you now. Because the school opted out, that means that when you pay on their rate, it's going to be on the same value that you had because they opted out. Most school districts opted out of the house bill, not just here in Doherty, but in other counties. And if you know that the school tax is pretty much a large part of your tax bill, but they opted out. When it comes to the city and the county, they did not opt out. So that floating homestead is effective for city and county taxes based on whatever their rate is. The school board, though, it would not change. The school board, you would pay on the full amount of that $190,000. Now, they can make adjustment in their rates, but that's just the nature. This was an extensive House bill. It covered a lot of different things. They came in and made several changes because of certain issues that came about, and we are looking for there to be changes for next year and moving forward. But this is a very comprehensive change in bill for this particular House Bill 581. Yes, Mr.
Assessed by the Board of Education, or are they exempt if they are a certain age and have no kids in school?
No, not having kids in school at this particular time does not exempt you. Yeah, that's one of the questions. I got in this business in 1980. I've heard that question probably 50,000 times. I will have no school kids in school. Should I have to pay? But Reverend Simmons, yes, it does not exclude anybody. If you qualify now for school tax exemption, if you qualify, then you get that exemption from that. but that's the reason why. If you all had to flood our phone lines, we want to make sure that everybody got an opportunity to see what you qualify for. But now, Reverend Simmons, I can tell you this. The school tax exemption, because it is a large amount, it's based on income. Now, it may not count Social Security, things like that. But if you are making money outside of that, working a job, doing something, it may count that. It's going to be based on income. And if you make over a certain amount, you're not going to be able to qualify for that. But that's when the tax return come in. They have to take that tax return and they have to look at what income you are showing on your tax return. If all you showing is Social Security or some type retirement, then you probably still may be okay. But we don't know. That's why we say call, come by, call, check it out. You know, Pastor, you're a prime example of that. You came down. And we have that all the time. Yes, sir.
Okay, my question is, with the school board and the millage rate, when it's increased, citizens usually don't have an opportunity to appeal those millage rate increases. It's like it's automatic. You don't have a voice. But would showing up at the school board meetings when this is voted on have any impact, and people being there to voice their concerns about arbitrary the millage rate increases for the school board?
Yes, ma'am, that's a good question. But what I would say is this: at this very moment, the county is holding that same meeting for anybody to come and voice their opinion. They had one this morning at 10 a.m. If you they have approved, I think, a millage rate increase, and that millage rate increase, you have to have 3 public hearings for the public to come in and voice their opinion. That the law requires that. So the school board, now they have an opportunity, as you just said, to come into the school board if they raising their rate. Now I think theirs might have been consistent over the years without an increase. I'm not sure, but you do have an opportunity to voice your opinion. And a meeting is taking place right now, and there will be another meeting on the 23rd. And I don't have that time, but it'll be on the 23rd that you can address the county raising of their millage rate. So there is opportunity to do so. Okay? This is it's page 14 of your handout. This is another, you see there's another House bill here, HB 808. Now, HB 808 is a personal property exemption. Some of you that have your own business and you have to pay personal property tax, whether you got a business, whether you in industrial business and you got machinery and equipment, that all those things are personal property. So you pay taxes on personal property as well, whether you got a boat, some lawn equipment that you had to pay taxes on. In the past, prior to 808, you didn't have to, if your value of that personal property did not exceed $7,500, you didn't have to pay. You didn't have to pay. If it did not exceed $7,500, you did not have to pay personal property. If you got that equipment for your office that came up to be $6,000, you don't have to pay on that. Now, with the benefit of House Bill 808, they increased that amount to $20,000. Can you imagine the impact? Now, you have people talking about, well, why do you have to do a rate increase? And forgive me, when I mention rate, y'all, I'm taking off my assessor's hat, okay? Because I don't talk about rates. So I had to make that acknowledge that I'm taking off my assessor's hat when I talk about rates. But at the same time, because of that, it'll give you an opportunity to have more reduction. If you got office equipment, furniture, fixtures that's running $16,000, in previous, because it's over $7,500, you had to pay personal property tax on it. With this new law that raised it to $20,000, you don't have to pay. That amount between $75,000 and 20,000 with the number of personal property accounts that we have in Douglas County amounted to a lot of money. But it's exempt. That's lost. That's lost. So where do you make that up at? That's what people are looking at and when they figuring about these rates right here, you know. But value, I'm back with my assessor's hat now, value, you don't have to pay if it's less than 20,000 of personal property, okay? All right. Page 15, 2026 countywide revamp. Department of Revenue requires Board of Assessors to value all properties at fair market value. And what is fair market value? It's the amount a knowledgeable buyer would pay a willing seller in an arm's length bona fide sale. Department of Revenue requires Board of Assessors ratio to fall between 36 and 44%. Ratio is calculated by the assessed value, 40% of your 100% sales price. Because of the increase in real estate sale prices from COVID, Douglas County 2024 sales ratio fell to 31.08%. That's where we fell, 31.08. We are extremely outside of the acceptable range. And that's why we have to revalue property. And I try to explain it like this sometimes. When people, I've had people say, well, why did you all let it stay like that for so long? If it was like that, that means in so many ways, you might have had a reprieve. And we always tell people that we have not had people complaining about values over the last 5 years. You know why? Because they know they lower than what they know they would sell for. But believe me, our appeals will skyrocket in 2026. And that's the nature of this game. Be prepared. The law forces us to value properties at fair market value. Now for 2026, we are getting ready to do that. Okay? And that's part of the reason I want to have you all prepared. Now, when it comes to that, you can still appeal any value that you get. You can appeal. I've heard people say a lot of times, you can't fight City Hall. But you can. You can. You can file an appeal. And we have people that talk a lot of time. As I stated earlier, I got in this business in 1980. I was the first African American to do this in this town in 1980. So I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to assessing in this town. And I always tell anybody that you can always count on, as long as I'm in a position in this town, that you will get fair and equitable assessment of your valuations. Always. Yes, Representative.
Let me see if I can phrase this the way I need to get the answer I need to hear. The new assessment that the law say you must do. Let's say right now my property is worth $100,000, and when they reassess it, the fair market value is $150,000. Somewhere earlier, you talked about how I'm able to do something. I don't know whether it was a floating or whatever that would take it back to what it was originally.
To have your taxes based on that original value.
That original amount.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes, that's what this floating homestead is.
Okay.
That is exactly what it is. That's the advantage of the floating homestead. And remember, I want you to always remember now, I said that the school board opted out. So that means that it does not apply, Reverend Simmons, to the school part of that. So when they calculate your taxes, the city and the county will base it on your old value from 2024. The school gonna base it on the new value, just for that purpose. But you still got savings there, because the school, the county and the city did not opt out. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, it's me again. I live in a subdivision type residential area. It has a school zone, and lately we been having a lot of crime in the area where just a few weeks ago a young lady car flipped right over in my neighborhood in the road on right near my house. And but what I'm trying to ask you is, what about the crime rate? Would that affect our taxes?
Okay, let me address that like this. You in a neighborhood, you got a element of increased crime, right? On the normal sense of things, someone may or may not want to buy a house in that neighborhood. If that's the case, you're not going to have people that going to be selling houses. And those that do sell might be selling under duress. Where they got a $100,000 house, they may sell it for $75,000 to get out the neighborhood. One sale does not set a market, but it is something that would be looked at. If that sale gives us an indication that in this neighborhood that values are dropping because of that crime, and that is a legitimate reason why that could happen, but that's why we stick with the data. We let the data tell us what to do. And when we assess that area and we look at sales in that area, and all of those that sold for 30% less, then we'll say, okay, we got to cut these 30%.
Well, I'm going off script. A tree fell on my home back in June, and I had a tough time convincing a certain person that it was on her property, and I still wind up having to pay a little. I'm still wind up paying money for that particular tree. Now, I went down. Me and my wife, we called down, and we realized that the property that we live on is still considered a subdivision. It's called Avondale subdivision back in 1951, and so now it's kind of a mixed neighborhood now. And when I say crime, it's not necessarily crime but you can hear the gunfire. You can witness the speeding of cars within this school zone, and I'm just saying, how does that affect property value like that?
Well, you pretty much just gave me the same scenario. We're going to look at the data from that area. The data from that area. It may not affect another area. It may just affect the area that you were talking about. We're going to still look at the data. We know that that is a legitimate concern for anybody buying a property in that area if crime is really, really high. So we do look at, we don't go and pull the crime rate. How many robberies did they have in this subdivision? What we pull is the sales data. How many houses sold in this neighborhood? Oh, once we determine some type of process there, then we say, what is the reason why these houses are selling for 30% less? Oh, crime. They just had a burglary right there. Those are the things, are the byproduct concern for us in this process. This process for valuation is supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be equitable, and it's supposed to be based on data. And that's what we do. But we know that those other things, politics does not supposed to play a part in the valuation process. But the realization, know that you have to at least be aware of it.
Most of the property that's around me, it's a lot of, I can't tell you all this as a mortgage, but a lot of people around me, they are renting. So that's my concern. You don't have that many, as far as I can tell, you don't have that many people purchasing their property over there. And like I said, it's a mixed bag of, if you understand what I'm saying, it's a mixed bag over there.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. And what you're doing, you are giving me multiple characteristics about that neighborhood. All those characteristics could be a factor.
Okay.
It could be a factor.
All right.
But that's an opportunity for you, sir.
I'm
That
calling.
once you get this 2026 rebound and your jump up there, those are the things you need to put in your appeal.
Okay.
Okay? Reverend Simmons.
I promise this is my last
That's okay.
question. We are supposed to have a check and balance.
Right.
Who's checking the Board of Education? They're allowed to raise their millage rates. They have public hearing, but nobody can vote yes or no. They have the right to raise it. Seems like the county has no control over the school system whose budget comes from the city, the county, and the state. I mean, where's the check and balance there? Who do we scream at?
Okay, before I answer that, let me pull my assessor hat off again. Okay? Now, just for the things that I'm aware of and understand, those are things that you have to look at the legislative action. You have to look at the local government and what they do. You have to look at the state legislative guidelines that allow any particular municipality to do a certain thing. Me, myself, I can't say about a particular check and balance for them. All I know is that would be something that your legislature will have to address that, and to be available at that school board hearing to address those things like that, because that's outside of my purview to discuss and talk about things like that. I try to stay within the realm of my purview. That's evaluation of property. Okay, let me finish page 16, 2026 rebound date. Around January 2026, we are going to finish. Now, some of you probably over the last year or so have noticed people coming around to your properties. We got a company called GMAS. This company is the company that we selected to do this reevaluation for us. They may come around, take pictures of your house, take measurements, and all of those things. And they just are compiling that data for this reevaluation. We were thinking that they are pretty much finished with that process because they started 2 years ago doing this. And around July is normally the time we send out assessment notice. I think pretty much most of you are probably familiar with that assessment notice. That assessment notice comes to you once we complete our values for a particular year. We have to send you an assessment notice because that's where your opportunity to appeal comes from. Once you get that assessment notice, and generally we usually send them out sometime around April, May, June, sometime around there. And you have 45 days to appeal it. 45 days that you can appeal that property value. And we expect to have a big increase in appeals this year, but just do your homework. Do your homework. The gentleman in the back talked about the things in his neighborhood. Those are factors that could affect your valuation in that area. So make sure you put that in your appeal. When we read that appeal, and make sure that if you appeal, make sure you put a phone number that somebody can call. I had a lady this morning say, well, y'all didn't come and look at my specific property. Put a phone number on that appeal. We'll call and we'll set up an appointment to come see your house inside and out to address any concern. If you got a cracked wall on the inside, you got a flow that swamp, we'll look at that. Those are the things that affect valuation, condition, effective age. All of those things affect your overall value of your property, and we are always open to that. Appeals period, 45 days. Around October 2026, we expect the tax bill to be going out. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Ms. Shauna Joseph is the tax director. In most other counties, she would be the tax commissioner. Dougherty County is the only county in the state of Georgia that has an appointed tax director. And I'm just saying that because this is Mount Zion, and I want you all to be informed of what this process is like in your neighborhood. Most people don't know that, but we are the only one. Now, that means that when I talk about tax bills, all of that is in the purview of Ms. Shauna Joseph. She is a tax director here in Dougherty County, but everywhere else, she is a elected tax commissioner. But her duties are the same. We give her the values. The Board of Assessors generate these property values. We turn them over to the tax director. Then she, in turn, create tax bills based on the rate provided her by the different government, city, county, school board. That's that process, okay? Now, a lot of you probably got a question, why have I not received this for this year? Normally, your tax bills are due by December 20. Yep, I figured that would get a clap because we've had hundreds of calls so far. And again, Pastor, I'm taking off my assessor hat when I address this. And I'm being used right now as a courier for Miss Shauna Joseph, who is the tax director, okay? Because this is outside of my purview. But what happened with this new House bill, it created a multitude of changes in the way we have to submit that digest, what we call our values, to Miss Joseph as the tax director. And all those changes that had to be worked out, most of them were being worked out by the Department of Revenue, by the state. They created this bill, the legislator did, but it created all kinds of issues. Well, I take that back. I won't say all kinds of issues, concerns. It created concerns, okay? And so with that being said, by the school opting out of this, that means that they require us not to put the estimated tax on your assessment notice. If you all think back, when you've been receiving your assessment notice over the last few years, it'll give you an estimated tax. That's in April or May. And it'll give you an idea based on the previous year. But because of the changes that had to be made, we were unable to get all that information compiled and accepted. So we are still in the process of trying to get them out. That is why you have not received a tax bill at this time. But let me say this. We've had numerous calls as to people being concerned. I got a lot of people that are elderly that know me, and they've been burning my phone up. Larry, where's my tax bill? I told them, just wait. It hadn't gone. You are not going to be late. You will have 60 days. Once you get that tax bill, you still going to have 60 days to pay that bill. Now, what does that mean? That means that it's a strong possibility it's going to roll over into January 26th. Well, most people paid that tax bill because in order for you to take that off on your property income tax for that year, it's got to be paid. It's got to be paid in that year. So what's going to happen at this point, and according to Miss Joseph, and this is Larry Thomas the courier now, December 24th, we are expecting that these new tax bills will be in the system. Not sent, but in the system, right? So you can go online. If everything work out the way we are looking at right now, on December 24th, and get you an assessment notice, a tax bill. If you are one of those that got multiple property, rental property, and you want to make sure that you get it paid this year, you need to call down there or go online, and I think it's www.dohertypay.com. You can go there and you can get a copy of your tax bill. There's a lot of people been concerned with that, and it was a big issue. We had some mix-up with they have to advertise all of this stuff. And in that mix-up, it got delayed. So she's anticipating now bills to be mailed on December the 29th. That's a limited amount of days for you to get that paid this year. But because of so what are we doing to try to offset some of that? She's looking at extended hours. She's going to be normal hours for the tax department is 8:30 to 5. Now doing from December the 24th and December through the 29th and 31st, you will be able to come in at 8 o'clock. If those bills are out there, you can get it. You can come in early, and we usually close at 5. We're extending the hours. She is extending the hours to 7 p.m. So you will have an opportunity now to still pay it if you want your property tax bill paid in 2025. Okay? This is what she's doing. Again, the site is www.dohertypay.com. Okay? And that you can call down to the tax department and get that information at any time. But these are the time frame for those bills. And I think that if you look at the final page here, okay, the handout, not the final page, page 17. Well, after 16 will be 17. That's a picture right there of a group of people. This is your board of tax assessors. This right here, the chairman, Mr. William Ashbury is center. Janita Lane is second from the right. Wayne Shaw, first on the left. George Anderson is first on the right. And yours truly, Vice Chairman Larry Thomas, is next to Mr. Ashbury, second from the left. These are the people. This is over 100 years of experience. So when you think about the people that's assessing your property, you have qualified people. Mr. Wayne Shaw was previous a personal property supervisor. He the one control and value all the personal property in Doherty County. Now he's a member of the Board of Tax Assessors. Mr. Ashbury been on this board and doing this for the last 50 years. A lot of experience. Mr. Zeta Lane is an attorney and bring a wealth of information to her. And George Anderson, far right, he was a previous chief appraiser on that board and had 30 years plus experience in the tax department. I myself, I am the previous chief appraiser in Doherty County, retired after 35 years and have been on the Board of Tax Assessors since that time. You have capable people on this Board of Tax Assessors. So have some confidence in us and believe that we're going to try to make sure that you are properly assessed and taxable, whether your property may be exempt. We won't deal with that. We got a special person that handles exempt property and whatnot. So always feel free to feel like you can come in at any time and ask questions, talk to us. We have an open door policy down there. And I think that's pretty much conclude this process. But if there are any additional questions, Pastor, I'll be glad to entertain. Okay. Right, okay.
Mr. Thomas, I have a question about the appeals process. Let's say someone thinks that their property has not been assessed fairly, and they appeal, and I'm sure you all have a lot of appeals over the years. Do you have any sense of what the success rate has been in the past for appeals?
Let me say this. In the last time that we did a reevaluation, we had thousands of appeals. And keep in mind now, if we are doing a reevaluation of property, we are doing it because of what? We got sales data. We got information to tell us we need to revalue. So in most cases, when you are coming appealing after a reevaluation, we gonna have sufficient sales data, but that does not mean you can't make a case for any property. Success rate during an appeals process, I don't have no data on that particular part right now, but you could say 10, 15%, 20% in some cases success. And I would say this, even if it's 30%, there could be change that occur because things happen. When you're doing a mass process like that, somebody could have got some data wrong. They could have had something wrong. So all those things filter in to that success rate. So it would be kind of hard to say what it is, but there are numerous successful appeals in this process. Now, during a non-revalve year, that would be a higher rate. A higher rate. Because for one, we don't generally have many appeals during a non-revalve. Like I just mentioned earlier, since the last 5 years, well, we have just a handful. And those pretty much come out to be issues with the property that we may not have been aware of.
I have a follow-up question. So the people who are making the determination about whether the appeal should be successful, are those the same folk that were involved in the initial assessment, or is it an independent group?
Good question, Maurice. This is the process of the appeal. And I was going to mention that right at the end, but I'll go ahead and pull it out now. Okay? The Board of Assessors, you appeal your property, they are reviewed in appeals, are reviewed by the Board of Tax Assessors. We are the first line of that appeal. We would have staff to review that appeal, and they would have to bring those appeals to the Board of Assessors, and they would present those. They would have to justify to the Board of Assessors that this is a valid value on this property. We take it very seriously when somebody come up there and present information to the board. Even though we oversee the assessment of it, we make sure that they are doing the right thing and applying the right process. So we may change something at our level, the Board of Assessors, if we don't deem it correct. And if you don't find success at the Board of Assessors, then you can appeal to the Board of Equalization. The Board of Equalization is an independent board. Doesn't have anything to do with our office. They are completely independent. And that's a 3-member board, and you can take an appeal that you were not successful with the Board of Assessors, and that would be forwarded automatically to the Board of Equalization. And after the equalization, you can present your case. We'll have a staff member there to make our case for that value. And then if you don't find success at equalization, you have the option of Superior Court at that point. Now, let me mention this because we're talking about the appeal. You can appeal your property on 3 different measures. One, the value. If you don't think your value is correct, you can appeal it. You can appeal it also on taxability. Well, if you get a tax notice on a piece of property that you think should be exempt, then you can appeal it on taxability. And you also can appeal on uniformity. Uniformity is a big word. Uniformity means that you are being treated fair and equitable. That means that we don't have your neighbor house at $100,000. He got the same house you got, and his is $90,000. That's uniformity. And you got the same house. And what happens in a situation like that, we look at each of those properties. If you come in on an appeal, you say, I want y'all to look at my neighbor's house. His house is bigger than mine. His house has this and has that. We may not have the opportunity to go inside the neighbor's house, but we can go inside yours when you permit us, and we can address any concern that you have with that. But those are the different things that affects that. Taxability, value, and uniformity. And you also, if you get denied homestead, you can appeal that as well. If you apply for homestead and they deny you, you can appeal it to the board. all the way to Superior Court. Good question, Maurice.
Okay, I have a question. Would you recommend that we be proactive, and if we make major renovations to our homes, could we call you? Say, for instance, I'll give you an example. My house built in the 70s, but I have totally redone my kitchen and my flooring. So is that something I could call the office and say, hey, can you come out here and take a look at the inside of my home?
Yes, ma'am, you sure can, but that's an outlier for us. Normally, we don't have people calling us saying, look, I done did this to my house. Come check it out and increase the value of it. Normally, we don't have that, but it does happen, Pastor. It does happen. But yes, ma'am, you can do that, and we'll be glad to come out and make that assessment.
Okay. I don't know whether you can answer this or speak on this or not. That's me.
Okay.
I was listening to the Dougherty County meeting this morning. Now, I understood. It might be a misunderstanding, but I understood that there's possibly a 15 to 16% tax increase. Can you speak on that? I know you say you don't have anything to do with the millage and all of that, but talk to me about that a little bit, please, sir.
All right, and my assessor hat is already off, ma'am, so I'm going to go ahead and just mention some things that I know about that. And I usually don't, but that amount, it can be misleading when you look at 16%. I think that they did an analysis also this morning because I was in there as well, and they mentioned that a house that valued at $125,000, that the tax amount would have been like $130 or $40, $50 more based on the increase. So if you got a $125,000 house, that $125,000 might be $1,800 or so maybe or something. That means that they're going to increase another $100 and some dollars. But yes, they use that amount and whatnot, and I think that kind of got people a little concerned by using that amount. But the impact of that is not as bad as what it seems.
And our county commissioners set the rate for the county, and the city commissioners for the city. Okay, so that's who we need to talk to about those millage rates.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, let's give Brother Larry Thomas a hand. Thank him for coming and sharing tonight. Again, we want you to be informed, and that information then empowers you to go and do whatever is necessary based on your particular situation. And with that, we're just going to say good night. Thank you all for coming.
Appreciate it. 431-2130, that's the number.